All right, guys, as always, I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report. It's time for another Friday Roundtable extravaganza. And joining me is conservative influencer Arynne Wexler and co-host of the Clay, Travis, and Buck Sexton Show. Although you could just call it the Clay and Buck Show. Why'd they put in their last... Clay, that's not... They don't put your last names. My guys put your last name. Just Clay and Buck.
Everybody knows at this point, yes.
Just Clay and Buck. We don't need their last... I'm firing somebody. And Arynne, what do you think about that intro, conservative influencer? It sounds scary to me.
It's funny you asked that because every time someone says influencer, I want to kill myself. No, because it just sounds so unserious. Also, don't worry, I shouldn't joke about. I know I shouldn't joke about it, but I would never kill myself. I would never give my haters a satisfaction. But yeah, I think strategic communications professional. You know, it sounds.
Oh yeah, that does sound. Yeah, Clay, that sounds a lot better, don't you think? Okay, let's go. Stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world. It's Friday, so we're going to recap all of it. And don't worry, guys, we're not doing too much about the war and all of that stuff. I promise you.
There's a war?
There was a little bit of a war this week. Well, according to Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson, thermonuclear World War III could start. And since we're pre-taping this, we could all be dead by the time we air this thing. But let's dive in on something else that I think a topic we all dig, which is some of the craziness around what's happening in the WNBA. The WNBA, a league which has existed for about 25 years, maybe a little bit more than that. I think about 30 years now, if I'm not mistaken, which has never turned a profit, which nobody was paying any attention to until the last year or so when they brought in Caitlin Clark. And they basically have been kicking the crap out of this girl. Why don't we start with the game this week that really just caught the top of everybody's mind? Take a look.
Watch when Caitlin Clark is trying to create some space. It looked like she just got hit in the eye there.
Ooh, and Marina Mabry. I missed that one, Idona.
Oh, I missed that one too. Yeah.
All right, Arynne, you're a woman, so I'm going to go to Clay first here. Clay, you know me. I love basketball. I am tempted, just like you are, to throw on a dress and get involved in that situation. But joking aside for a moment, if I was the commish of the WNBA, you kick those two girls out of the league yesterday. No more of this. They have their Michael Jordan, and they are going to break her eye socket, or she's going to pull something and sit out a season. She should start her own league and get the hell out of there that they are letting her do this. This is not like 1980s, 1990s basketball where everybody was hitting everybody in the Bad Boys Pistons and Jordan and the Bulls were crushing the Knicks and the Knicks were crushing them back. This is a completely different situation.
Yeah, look, first of all, let's talk about, I'm a sports nerd, but let's talk about the larger history. I think at this point in time, Caitlin Clark is more successful as a team sport athlete joining a league than anybody we've ever seen before.
Wow.
And I mean that more than Jordan, because the NBA with Bird and Magic had already kind of established itself. The NFL is the unquestioned biggest and best sport in America, but there are tons of guys that if they suddenly weren't in the league would be fine. Mm-hmm. The WNBA, as you just pointed out, lost money for 30 years. Nobody cared about it. It was an afterthought. She arrived and they immediately started setting record ratings. Best analogy in sports. She is for women's basketball what Tiger Woods was for golf and what Venus and Serena Williams were for tennis, bringing a brand new audience that has never cared before to the sport. She's the golden goose, and they seem compelled to grab the golden goose by its throat and choke it to death. I've never seen anything like it. You mentioned it. If I were giving Caitlin Clark advice, first time I've ever said this, the league needs her more than she needs the league. I would be exploring the idea of starting my own league if I were Caitlin Clark, because I think the audience would follow her.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not just saying it to be flippant. I don't think you are either. I think if she just gets through this season and then says, you know what, I'm not interested in this. I will start my own league. Imagine the amount of people that would support her, the money that would go in, all the fathers that would be proud that they, hey, I'm going to throw in some money to help Caitlin Clark build a basketball league where actually we're going to respect the game of basketball. Arynne, I feel like this gets to the core of what you are as a conservative influencer. These girls that hate other girls, basically. They don't like her because she's a girl and successful. She also happens to be white and straight, and that's not going to fly over there.
100%. No, I mean, it's interesting when you think about the dynamics between men and other successful men and women and other successful women, right? Because men do the opposite from women. Men actually seek out men who are more successful and to, aspire to be like them, to elevate themselves. And what do women do when they see a woman who is what they want to be? They tear her down, or in Caitlin Clark's play. I can't even speak. I don't know what's going on. I had no tequila and I can't even speak. But with Caitlin Clark, they're jabbing her in the eye. They're tossing her around the court. It's absolutely crazy. And also, where are the women in America to really come out and defend Caitlin? Just across the board, you see women actively not supporting other women and women actually sabotaging other women. And we know there are studies about this. We know that female hairdressers, when they're nervous about their client and think that they're more attractive, that the client's more attractive, they will recommend they chop off her hair. They will recommend a short haircut to a woman to make her less attractive. Okay?
Isn't that what they do? Don't they do that purposely with bridesmaids too? That's why they put them in those nasty ass dresses all the time, because they want to shine.
But you know what? I forget the name, and you guys would know this. I'm sorry, but I'm not one of the 5 fans of the WNBA. But there was that blonde chick that came to Caitlin's defense on the court, right?
Sophie Cunningham. She's going to be the next superstar, because this is actually interesting, Dave. And this is and what I would say, Arynne, is what should happen is she's so famous. Everybody else should try to get in sort of the penumbra of her glow and ride her fame to becoming famous themselves.
Right.
Like back in the day, Dennis Rodman was more famous because he was on the Bulls. Horace Grant, B.J. Armstrong, John Paxson, all these, Scottie Pippen even, all these guys I'm naming, because they were close to Jordan. Even his opponents, Patrick Ewing, John Starks, Reggie Miller, John Stockton, Karl Malone, I can run through them all. They all got more famous.
Give me a little Clyde the Glide. What are you doing here? Come on.
Jordan was famous.
Yeah, but Clay, you can't apply logic to women. So that's your first mistake. The second thing is the Sophie chick, she's hot. This is a hot girl. And that's why she came to Caitlin's defense, because she's a real girl's girl who's confident, and a confident woman will help other women. So it's not that all women will sabotage each other. It's that insecure women will sabotage, which is most women, will sabotage other women. And that's what you saw.
Well, Arynne, you asked, we delivered. Here is your girl crush, Sophie Cunningham, who is on the same team as Caitlin Clark. And here she is dragging J.C. Sheldon to the ground in defense of Caitlin Clark.
Golson had it knocked away. Good hands by Allen. And Sheldon comes up with the steal. Sheldon going coast to coast. And here we got another break. That's a flagrant foul.
Arynne, I love it. I'm not really sure why we're showing that, other than you and her would have a good time, huh?
It's just so good. I love seeing this. I honestly don't want Caitlin Clark to start her own league, by the way, because I'm having too much fun with all this drama, personally.
Clay, let me get your take on this, because Stephen A. Smith went on and was discussing just all the craziness around Caitlin Clark. And he kind of, I think, got it right. And I like Stephen A. He's been here. I consider him a friend. But then he had a but in his sentence that I think changes the attitude of this a little bit. Take a look.
Clearly, when it comes to Caitlin Clark, there's some resentment, as I've articulated before. What people are missing, Monica, is I have no problem with it whatsoever. Okay, yes, there's resentment because, first of all, you're absolutely right. This is much ado about nothing. In the heat of competition, tempers flare. You know, last time I checked, women got tempers just like men do. Ain't no problem. Ain't no problem at all. Ain't no big deal at all. I love it personally. Now, here's the thing about it, because I want to make sure everybody understands what I'm about to say. Caitlin Clark being that golden goose per se, that rising tide that's lifting all boats, I stand by my past proclamations that there's resentment towards her because of that. But I want to take it a step further. There's also resentment towards her because she instigates resentment towards her sometimes.
Clay, I think he's right that there is resentment towards her, but the but part is the problem because then he says it's because she waves a little bit. We got video of that. So that's her move. That she does that. Apparently, she does that move, and that move right there is the move that leads her to getting crushed on inbound passes, elbowed to the head, and generally just having her ass kicked all the entire time.
I thought he was going to say because she's white and straight in a league that often is black and lesbian. And I don't mean that as some sort of like insult in some way, just that she looks different than most people who have been in the league before. And that's why I think the analogy of Tiger Woods and Venus and Serena Williams makes so much sense because Tiger was a minority athlete. What do you call himself? The Kablan Asian, because he's got an Asian mom, black dad, but all these different ethnic backgrounds. And then Venus and Serena, certainly as black women in a majority white tennis league. What happened when they entered the league? Everybody said, hey, let's get paid. Yeah. I don't understand because even on the women front, women's tennis is a very individual sport. You're playing against everybody on an individual basis as opposed to a team basis. You've got the opportunity to ride this to a level. Do you know what the average salary is in the WNBA right now? $75K.
I was going to say 80.
$75K. I'm not trying to insult people out there, but if you are a professional at the highest level of your ability and you are a pro athlete and you make $75K, it's like embarrassing. People say they should fine the girls. Well, they would have to pay a fine of like $52.60, because that's how much they're making per game. It's like getting a parking ticket. It doesn't work that well. But look, golf and tennis, both one male sport, one female sport, said, let's all make more money and take advantage of more eyeballs on us. And they don't seem to be able to do it in the WNBA, which I think is a failure of leadership. And I also think is going to ultimately blow up in a negative way. Because to your point, Dave, women tear their ACL. I hate to say it. Women tear their ACLs infinitely more often than men do. If Caitlin Clark, she just had an injury where she was out for a little bit. If she got injured, tore her ACL, she's out for a year. I don't know that interest level is going to stay the same. You got to make the money while you can. They don't even have a shoe for her yet, I don't think. This is one of the most illogical, screwed up failures that we've ever seen in terms of taking advantage of the proverbial golden goose.
Well, Caitlin, if you're watching the show today, I got a great stem cell guy. I'm already playing 5-on-5 again. Arynne, just one last thing on this. Do you think that fundamentally somehow, and I know some people are going to say this is sexist, that there's just a difference between seeing guys kind of fight with each other and throw each other on the ground and having the enforcer defend the other player the way Clay said, Dennis Rodman used to do for Michael Jordan, versus when you see girls do it, it just feels different. Right or wrong, it just feels different.
Yeah, I feel like these are prison conditions. This isn't normal, right? Women are supposed to gossip about each other maliciously. They're not supposed to be like physically checking each other on the court. But yeah, I mean, I don't have, this is the most I've ever talked about sports, by the way. And obviously it's about the female emotions behind basketball because we can't talk about women with all of that. But no, it's just, there's a nastiness to it that they are taking out physically, and it doesn't work because that's not how women are. And I'm surprised we don't see more hair pulling, honestly.
Question for Arynne, and I'll be curious to hear your answer too, but we're morons because we're guys. How much of this has to do with most women don't aspire, generally speaking, to be like 6'3" basketball players, whereas a lot of women would aspire to be a soccer player or a volleyball player, right? The bodies of the girls that are in those sports are somewhat aspirational. Mm-hmm. And so most people don't say, and generally speaking, you can have a debate, is it better to be a super tall girl or a super short guy? Like most guys don't aspire to be jockeys, right? Like we want to be bigger, stronger, faster than we are. How much of that plays in with some of this as well?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe they're uncomfortable in their own skin. And on top of it, what is it? Like 95% of them are lesbians. So they grew up at a time where being gay wasn't so easy. And yeah, I think that combination is probably not so great for this league. And then they're also for sure cycling together. So nightmare scenario. Couldn't be me. I'm so like, this is like, I'm so sorry to have to talk about this for so long because I find the WNBA to be so deeply embarrassing for females, for our gender. It's
Just to be fair, Dave and I would be dominant WNBA All-Stars. I'm just tossing it out there.
I want to see them all play a high school basketball team and see how they do. That I would actually
offered $1 million for it to happen.
He literally did. It's an interesting point, though, Clay, because it's like, McNutt Bowl probably by the end was like, I lived my best life. I was 7'7", but I lived my best life playing in the NBA, where a woman that would be that freakishly different might take it a little bit differently. Anyway, now that we've offended everybody, let's move on. But first, Tax Network USA. This month, Tax Network USA is celebrating American Pride Month with 10% off all services honoring freedom, resilience, and financial independence. If you missed the April 15th deadline or you have back taxes, don't wait. The IRS is ramping up enforcement fast. Penalties can hit 5% per month. The good news, Tax Network USA can help. Whether you're self-employed, run a business, or your finances are a mess, their experts know how to get results. Consultations are free, and acting now could save you from wage garnishments or bank levies down the road. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Dave to get started. Take advantage of this month's sale for 10% off. All right, guys, so the other big story before we get to the war, of course, is all of the ICE stuff and the deportations and people thinking that Donald Trump is very mean for doing the very things that he has promised to do for literally over a decade. Here he is doubling down on having ICE agents go into the blue cities that just simply refuse to defend themselves.
I want them to focus on the cities, because the cities are where you really have what's called sanctuary cities, and that's where the people are. I look at New York, I look at Chicago. I mean, you got a really bad governor in Chicago and a bad mayor, but the governor's probably the worst in the country, Pritzker. But I look at how that city has been overrun by criminals, and New York and L.A. Look at L.A. L.A. Those people weren't from L.A. They weren't from California. Most of those people, many of those people, and that's a focus. Biden allowed 21 million people to come into our country. Of that, vast numbers of those people were murderers, killers, people from gangs, people from jails. They emptied their jails out into the U.S. Most of those people are in the cities, all blue cities, all Democrat-run cities, and they think they're going to use them to vote. It's not going to happen.
Clay, it seems to me this is just another one of those 80-20 issues with Trump. Everyone backs him on this. Yes, there's a crazy minority that doesn't, but the people of Chicago have had it. I was just in Austin. It's a homeless shithole. Like, we see what's happening in LA. We can do the laundry list of Portland and Seattle, et cetera. So I don't love the idea of the feds coming in or ICE coming in or the National Guard coming in, but congratulations, guys. You made your bed and we're still a nation to whatever extent we are.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest challenge here is it's a math equation. They made the calculation that if they wide open the southern borders during Biden's administration, and we know there's 10 million plus for sure that came over. Tom Homan told me he thinks there's around 20 million illegals. That's the number that he would predict if he had to guess right now. They knew that once they let them in, that it was going to be almost impossible to get them to leave through the court system and the procedures in place to allow it. And if you have, leave aside the politics of it for a moment. If you have a system where you're letting everybody in and you're making it incredibly difficult for everybody to leave, what if you created a situation where these people are going to be here for a long time? Then you add in birthright citizenship. The longer you're here, the more likely you are to find someone, the more likely you are to have a child, which makes it more difficult to kick you out. And I think this is just a diabolical long-range plan to change the fabric of the United States that Democrats believe is going to help them when it comes to political power. I think it's the only calculus that makes sense.
So, Arynne, I know we're all kind of on the same side of this thing, but do you think that Trump can actually do this? Do you think within the 3+ years he has left, he will be able to get enough ICE agents and National Guard and God knows who else into these cities? And somehow, if it's 21, it's just 21 supposedly in the 4 years. That's on top of at least 12 million that were before that. And God knows what the real numbers are. You think he has any chance here to do this?
I think he has a chance just because I think Trump 2.0 has been even more effective, far more effective than Trump 1.0. And so I'm not in a position where I want to be doubting his capabilities. But I do think right now I'm looking at headlines, I'm getting alerts on my phone, and we're seeing all sorts of tweet alerts of, 100 ICE or 100 illegals caught here, 20 caught here. Those are pretty unimpressive numbers. And so what was impressive, obviously, was that he sealed off the border and we went from over 100,000 illegals entering the country a day to practically zero, or actually zero in some months, but in like single digit numbers. So that's very impressive. When it comes to actually getting people out of the country, exactly what you're saying, it's very hard to do. But I have learned in many areas, including the war, which we're going to get to, not to cast my doubt so soon on Donald J. Trump.
No, I'm completely with you. If anyone can do it, it's him. But the numbers are kind of crazy. Or we could just listen to LA Mayor Karen Bass, who says that everything's just fine.
Why is there more active duty National Guard troops being activated in Los Angeles?
Well, I have to ask the question differently. Why were they ever activated? Why were they federalized to begin with when we never had a problem that really required that? The governor is very accessible. We're in communication and collaboration with him all the time. If we needed the National Guard, we would have called them. And so the question is, why all of this show of force when things were never out of hand? Los Angeles is 500 square miles. The protests consumed about 2 square miles.
2 square miles is a pretty big spot. That's number one. Number two, Clay, the implication is somehow that these masked people with Hamas masks and the flags and the Mexican flags and that Molotov cocktails and all, and they're throwing boulders over overpasses, that somehow they weren't going to do all that. It was just because the feds showed up that they decided to do all of that. That is a bridge that you might throw a rock over too far.
Yeah, no kidding. And also just start with the logic of it's not that much of an area inside of Los Angeles. Would you say that after a tornado?
Right.
Would you sit back and be like, hey, the tornado wrecked a huge part, 2 square miles of Los Angeles, but the rest of Los Angeles is fine. Why are we talking about it at all? Of course you wouldn't. What we want is not to have any lawlessness anywhere in Los Angeles. We don't want Waymo vehicles burning. We don't want police officers having to hide under overpasses while there's Molotov cocktails being thrown at them and at their cars. And this is, to me, emblematic. And I got to give Trump credit here, because how quickly did this thing get snuffed? I mean, I know they had the No Kings rally and everything else, but I really thought that this LA-style riot, this mostly peaceful protest, had the potential to turn into something like the BLM summer of 2020. And I actually think this is a good example of something Trump learned in 1.0. I think he wishes, if he could go back in time, that he had gone into Minneapolis with force, even when Tim Walz, the governor there, didn't want it, even when the mayor didn't want it, and helped to snuff out these protests that took over for months. Whatever you want to say about the ICE protests, maybe they're going to surge back up during the course of the summer, but it definitely seems like it's dialed down since they sent in the National Guard and since they sent the message that they were not going to allow this to happen, which is a credit to Trump.
I want to show you guys 2 quick videos of Los Angeles. Arynne, there's a rumor that you're back on the market right now. I wonder if you're interested in this fella. He was pretty good in Mad Max. Come on.
You're always looking out for my best interests, Dave. Thank you so much. That almost looks like the highway here in Miami, because here he's also driving like Mad Max, Valhalla, Mario Kart style, except people aren't waving other flags. They're just endlessly stupid and texting while driving. But yes, thank you for that.
All right, fine. Then comment on this man, woman, man.
Kidnapper, you. Take your fucking mask off, bitch. Come on. Let's go right up there on Alameda. Come on, me and you. Right now, take the mask off.
I might believe in aliens now after seeing that. I don't know what that was, but it's exactly what you'd expect to see at one of these protests. The people, you see these, like, I would say low T soy betas. I was about to say twinks, really, at these protests, getting very upset and crying and yelling at officers. And you see the pixie haircut freak women who look more like men. It's like they've sort of merged and then crossed over onto the other side when it comes to gender. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on. For sure, like I could smell them from here through the video. And they're all in some weird Marxist polycule. So Yeah, I'd say that looks like about the average person you'd expect to see blocking a highway for productive citizens who actually pay their taxes.
I don't think they've figured out how to work on the voice box there, because you can do the pixie haircut, you can add boobs on anything,
right,
but
like,
that is a voice right there. That guy was saying, like, I don't know what else I need to know. That's a dude, all right?
You're going to go all the way, get the boobs, put on the dress, like, at least pitch up the, hello, can't you do that? Like, I'm going to get you. Like,
I guess the voice box surgery they haven't figured out yet, because that is that's the deep voice, man. That is a man.
One little voiceover class probably costs you $50. In LA, there's a zillion of those things. Clay, I know you like this one because it involves sports and kicking people out of the country.
Like earlier this morning, dozens of ICE agents gathering with their faces hidden, wearing tactical gear. This was shot around 9 o'clock this morning before the agents headed out to various locations in the area. We're hearing from elected officials that LA Council District 1 workers alerted LAPD of the staging at Dodgers Gate. LAPD then notified the Dodgers, and the organization apparently told the ICE agents to leave the property. But there are still a handful of masked federal agents here. Councilmember Eunices Hernandez showed up about 45 minutes ago and is upset that the agents have not left.
Well, they went to Dodger Stadium. Apparently the Dodgers
what's funny,
no outfield.
What's funny about this is it was only a couple of days ago that to protest ICE, I think you guys probably saw this, there was a woman national anthem singer who refused to sing the national anthem in English, contrary to the Dodgers' request, did it in Spanish, and then made a video and said that she had done the whole thing because she wanted to protest ICE. Then I went on Sean Hannity's show, as one does, and said, maybe there should be an ICE raid before a Dodger game. So maybe this is somewhat connected. Maybe it's not. To be fair, there are a limited number of staging areas. This is what started all of this, right? Like, you have to have a lot of vehicle parking, everything else. The Dodger Stadium does have huge areas of parking. It's a honestly fabulous place to watch a baseball game. But we will see how exactly this progresses. But the Dodgers put out a statement. It has gone viral. I was just looking down at my phone because I imagine this is going to turn into a big story, and it's all happened in the last 20 or 30 minutes, basically.
From Clay possibly creating the ICE Dodger situation to, I wonder, Arynne, Miss Florida girl, did you have anything to do with the Florida Attorney General saying this?
Attorney General James Uthmeier here at the Miami-Dade Collier training facility. This is an old, virtually abandoned airport facility right in the middle of the Everglades. Florida's been leading on immigration enforcement, supporting the Trump administration and ICE's efforts to detain and deport criminal aliens. The governor tasked state leaders to identify places for new temporary detention facilities. I think this is the best one. As I call it, Alligator Alcatraz. This 30 square mile area is completely surrounded by the Everglades. Presents a efficient, low-cost opportunity to build a temporary detention facility because you don't need to invest that much in the perimeter. If people get out, there's not much waiting for them other than alligators and pythons. Nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Within just 30 to 60 days after we begin construction, it could be up and running and could house as many as 1,000 criminal aliens. This presents a great opportunity for the state of Florida to work with Miami-Dade and Collier counties. Alligator Alcatraz, we're ready to go.
Like, I don't know, is this real life? Is this parody? That's real life. One thing's that's strange to me. They said 33 square miles. You're only going to be able to put 1,000 people in there? What are they getting, an acre each? Seems a little ridiculous.
Well, it's a lot of swamp, right, Steve? So it's good we're getting some use out of it, because right now you have to drive through Alligator Alley just to get to the west coast of Florida. And sometimes when you're going further north, when I go to see friends in Sarasota, for example, there's a hypotenuse that would be a lot faster, and you can't drive that way because it's a swamp. So I'm not surprised the facility can't hold more than 1,000 people. But kind of to the point earlier, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I don't want it to be just 1,000 people. We should have tens of thousands of people being detained and deported. So I love the show. It's fun, but not everything's a meme, and some things should really just happen seriously. And I would really just like to see 50,000, 100,000 people here illegally. Actually,
did you guys ever see there? Go ahead, Clay.
Trump is going to love this. I mean, this is 100% designed. Trump, Alligator Alcatraz, first of all, sounds like an amazing reality show, right? Hey, you committed a crime, but if you can swim and get away, then you don't have to serve your time. On the other hand, you might get eaten by an alligator or strangled by a python. Like, I would watch that show.
Right.
It's kind of it's like Hunger Games, Florida. And if he wanted the actual Alcatraz to be used, I give credit to James here, who is, I think, a really smart legal guy, but also is a bit of a showman in that Trump's going to respond to this. I would be surprised if Alligator Alcatraz, in all honesty, doesn't become a real thing.
Right. Well, that's the point. All joking aside, look how we do things here. Whether this comes to fruition like exactly as it's laid out or not, we don't mess around. DeSantis was on this show last week saying those guys get in your way when you're on the highway and you're doing something legal, you drive through them. And that's just so starkly different than many of the blue cities and states that Trump was talking about. Let's talk about balance of nature real quick and then more on the other side. As I've gotten older, I've realized that staying healthy isn't just about living longer, it's about feeling good while you do it. And for me, nutrition plays a huge part in that. That's why I've started using Balance of Nature. It's an easy way to get the nutrients from 31 different fruits and vegetables without having to prep, cook, or clean. These are real, whole foods, gently dried to preserve their nutrients and packed into capsules. No fillers, no junk, just good, clean produce. They also haven't raised prices in 10 years, and they're keeping it that way. They also include a fiber and spice supplement that rounds it all out. It's a supplement designed to support energy, digestion, and overall wellness. Right now, you can make a fresh start to and receive 35% off your first order and a free bottle of fiber and spice when you become a preferred customer. Just head on over to balanceofnature.com and use code Rubin. Again, that's balanceofnature.com/Rubin. This story brings warmth to my heart. CNN is going down. Listen to this from Outkick. I think, Clay, you know a little something about these people over there. CNN staffers are reportedly fearful of mass layoffs as parent company plans to bury cable news network in split. Several of the top hosts could be gone. Arynne, what the hell is Stelter going to do without that gig? What is he going to do? He has no other skill. There's nothing that man can do. We're going to have to put him on the government dole?
I mean, what are we going to talk about if they actually get fired, right? I mean, luckily for them, there are a lot of barista jobs also available, which I think they will all be well suited for with their English lit degrees from whatever liberal arts college they went to. But I mean, I'm honestly shocked this hasn't happened already. Maybe because Trump came into office again and the world didn't fall apart like they warned their viewers, that people aren't listening to them anymore. Color me shocked. So no, I mean, I love to see it. I hope they publicize the bloodbath. I hope we have a reality TV show to watch as every last person is fired at CNN. I would pay money to watch that. It would be like pay-per-view. I enjoy this. I love it. So let's keep it coming.
Well, let's see how you guys feel about this then. Jake Tapper, everyone knows he participated in the cover-up around Joe Biden's mental health. Then he wrote the book about it. Then he got shit all over because of it. It was the strangest press tour I've ever seen. Here he is quoting Orwell while he did the Orwellian thing as if he had nothing to do with it.
George Orwell once wrote that, quote, "We are all capable of believing things which we know to be untrue. And then when we are finally proved wrong, impudently twisting the facts so as to show that we were right. Intellectually, it is possible to carry on this process for an indefinite time. The only check on it is that sooner or later, a false belief bumps up against a solid reality, usually on a battlefield." Now, when George Orwell wrote that, he was talking about World War II. He wrote, quote, "The Germans and the Japanese lost the war quite largely because their rulers were unable to see facts which were plain to any dispassionate eye." And then he said, and this is one of my favorite quotes ever, "To see what is in front of one's nose needs a constant struggle." And that's the lesson for me. We all saw it happening, and we all refused to see it. And maybe some of you are exceptions.
You almost got it right at the end. Except it wasn't us. It was you, Jake. All he had to do at the end was take off the glasses and be like, "By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I participated. I'm actually sorry. And I know it's kind of ironic I wrote the book, but here I am, full mea culpa." Instead, he's pretending that people like us didn't exist.
Well, that half the country's media didn't exist, because you were saying for years, I was saying for years, I'm sure Arynne was saying for years, that Joe Biden didn't have the physical or mental capacity to be president. And most of our audience agreed. And so this, to me, is a interesting story example of, I feel like I could make every argument that they make on MSNBC better than most of the MSNBC could, because I read the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, and I understand their arguments, whereas there does not seem to be a similar ability to even analyze. You know where I saw this perfectly? You mentioned DeSantis. When Gavin Newsom and DeSantis debated on Sean Hannity's show on Fox News, Gavin Newsom got filleted because he doesn't ever have to actually stand up and make arguments outside of the echo chamber of left-wing media. And when he was confronted by DeSantis with the other side's arguments, it was like he had never seen or heard them before. And I think that's kind of the world that we're in. The only thing I'll say positive about Jake Tapper is, because of that, the only reason they covered Original Sin was because Jake Tapper wrote it. Dave, if you and I had written it, co-authors, and everything else had been the exact same in that book, they wouldn't have covered it. Jake Tapper was covered because he's of the left, and they were willing to trust him on the book. The other half that could have written it, Arynne could have written it, I could have written it, you could have written it. We could have written it all together and had the same exact sources telling the same exact stories, and they would have pretended it didn't exist.
You know, that's actually a great point. Like, if any of us or all of us had written it, we would have probably sold more copies, because it would have gone to something that our audiences care about more, that didn't participate in the cover-up. And they would have never put it on the New York Times. Meanwhile, he gets #1 on New York Times, which obviously is fictitious anyway. So it just shows you how the grift works. I know we could pile on these people all day long, but Arynne, I thought this one was interesting because ABC News fired Terry Moran about a week ago. He went off on like just this crazy Twitter rant about Stephen Miller. It was really, really vile. And they actually did fire him, which I think was the right thing. So now I guess he's a podcaster like everyone else. He went on this show, and listen to him talk about what he thinks journalists' responsibility is.
My own feeling is you don't sacrifice your citizenship as journalism, and your job is not to be objective. There is no Mount Olympus of objectivity where a Mandarin class of wise people have no feelings about what their society. We're all in this together. What you have to be is fair and accurate. And I would refer to the interview with the president that I did, or a lot of my work. And I would also say that this, while very hot, is an observation, a description that is accurate and true.
Arynne, I appreciate when they say the quiet part out loud. His job as a journalist is not to be objective. And he seems to not believe in truth, actually. I mean, that's basically what he said. There's nothing that's really true. I'm just going to try to be fair, not true.
Well, they don't even hear themselves, right? Like, when he's admitting this, when he's saying this, he doesn't even realize what he's giving away in his statement. That's how far gone they are. And that's how you could tell. You could see how they talk amongst themselves, you know, behind closed doors in moments like this, when he's on the show talking in this way, because that's what every single person on the left in media, that's how they think too. Mm-hmm. And also, I don't know whose show he's on. Sorry, maybe I'm supposed to know this, but that pretty boy with a lot of hair gel who's laughing as he's saying this and smiling and nodding along, just like, absolutely, this sounds great. He looks like an idiot too. It's just like when we have to talk about The View because I'm on a show with Dave Rubin and it's been too long on the show for us to not bring it up.
All right, no View next week. I'm doing it. That's it. I'm finally doing it. Okay.
But when Whoopi Goldberg is talking about how, the plight of her life as a multimillionaire celebrity is the same as being in Iran as a woman, right? Like, who can't even show her hair. And everyone on the show nods along, and Joy Behar is agreeing with her. They not only, it's not just that one person saying it, it's that everyone else encourages them and agrees with them. And what we were saying earlier, no one ever challenges them on these beliefs. So yeah, at least they're saying the quiet part out loud. There is no such thing from the left anymore as objective.
Did anyone meme the View Iranian version, where they all have to have hijabs and full burqas on, and you can't even tell who the people are? That would actually be very, very funny. Like, all 5 women are sitting at a table, and you can't tell them apart at all, and they're doing the View version of Iran. But my theory here, Dave, on Terry Moran is here's what I think happened. We were talking about CNN and the fact that they're going to have to make cuts and who's going to be left and whatnot. I think they went to Terry Moran. He's been at ABC News forever. He's probably making $5 or $6 million a year. And they were like, hey, Terry, we'll bring you back. But, nobody really cares about anything that you do in the entire journalism world. You have no audience. You have no fan base. We'll pay you $1.5 million. And I think he threw a fit. And I think he decided, you know what? I'm going to have to go out on my own. I want to go out as a martyr. And he intentionally sent those tweets knowing that they would require ABC News to do something. And then he rides off into the sunset as a hero, as opposed to what was really going on, which was he didn't want to take an 80% pay cut and he wasn't ready to retire. So he tried to find a way to make more money, and he figured that's the way. That's my whole story. That's what I think actually happened here.
I think that's probably far closer to the truth, because the thing is, what people don't understand is the chair is worth something, meaning anyone could sit in the chair at that time slot, and the ratings don't really move much one way or another. Every now and again, you get a breakout star, but it's the chair that matters. So you're right. Nobody's like, I want to sign up for Terry Moran's Substack. I think he's really great. We all had to build audiences the hard way.
On the internet, when you're competing against everybody as opposed to 6 television networks.
Yeah, exactly. I want to jump over, though, to connect this to Obama, because the guy, just go away already. But here he is. He's back again, explaining that we are, of course, all the liars and he is the truth teller.
If you want propaganda to be effective, you don't have to convince people that what you are saying is true. You just have to flood the zone with so much poop. They used a different word, but you have to flood the zone with so much untruth constantly that at some point people don't believe anything.
Well, that's interesting, Barack Obama, because here's video of you on November 3rd, right before the election, spreading poop.
Why would you place your faith in somebody who instituted a so-called Muslim ban, who sat down for pleasantries with Holocaust deniers, who said that there were very fine people on both sides of a white supremacist rally?
Arynne, I'm not going to waste another breath trying to debunk that anymore. We're well past that. But that's the point right there, that he went up the day before the election. He knows he's lying. He cannot be that stupid. He cannot be that so in a bubble. He knew he was lying. So he did exactly what he's now claiming we all do. He flooded the zone with BS to hopefully get a woman who forced a coup on the sitting president.
Yeah, well, it's funny that we started the show talking about the lesbians of the WNBA, because now we're talking about our first gay president, Barack Obama. No straight man ever sits like that, first of all, unless they're European, which he's not. But talking about where he might be from, it's funny how he says Muslim. It still gets me every time when I see one of those clips. But yes.
And by the way, there was no Muslim ban, because they left out, I think, the top 6 most populous Muslim countries.
Ban.
Yeah.
Yes, Barack Hussein Obama. There was no Muslim ban. But yes, every single one of these accusations is obviously confession and projection. It's classic narcissist behavior. We know he's lying. And again, they're just giving away the playbook of exactly how they do things. It's Nancy Pelosi also. She has these moments where she just gives away what the left strategy is. And the problem with people like Barack Obama and generally the left, and why they lost the election, is because he has these moments where he thinks he's being profound and he thinks he's telling you how much he cares about you, the American people, and he's acting so serious, but he's treating the audience as if they're stupid, and they're not. And they know how they're being treated and they resent it, and that's exactly why the left lost this November.
Well, speaking of treating the audience like they're stupid, Mark Ruffalo, better known as the Hulk, unfortunately, Ed Norton really dropped the ball by not picking up that MCU check. I mean, you know that he was the original, the original in the modern version of the Hulk, and then he said no to all of that cash, like $50 million, because he just didn't want to be part of it. Anyway, they bring in Mark Ruffalo. I cannot stand this guy. He's a Hamas supporter. He's a leftist, socialist, Bernie-loving fool, and he also cannot make the distinction between legal and illegal immigrant.
It's not the immigrants, it's the billionaires. Well, we're seeing what's happening. First of all, we're understanding that the immigrants aren't the criminals. If you look at the statistics, most of the crimes that are committed in this country are by white people, that non-immigrants, and they add to our economy by the billions. And so for every horrible thing that you have to go through in life, you get an equal gift in return. And the gift of this time is that we get to see who the true villains are. We get to see who's really making our lives unbearable and who's making us so desperate. It's not the immigrants, it's the billionaires. And it's time to take our country back from that extreme wealth that has its hands all over the power of the nation and become a beautiful, burgeoning democracy that works for the people, not just the very wealthy.
Clay, you know that moment when Bruce Banner's starting to lose it and the heart rate's jumping and his face starts altering, and that's what's happening to him. Why is his face becoming a little contorted? That's one thing. Crazy hat. He's worth $90 million, apparently. So you know what, Mark Ruffalo? It's like, okay, instead of billionaires, how about people worth over 50? They're the bad guys. Like, we can all play this game, man.
Well, also, first of all, saying white people commit the majority of the crimes, not actually true, right? I mean, for instance, black people commit over half of all murders by FBI stats, right? And the argument of immigrants commit less crimes than Americans, I don't know that I would buy that argument necessarily because I don't trust the data, but let's just pretend it's true. Do you know what illegal immigrants should commit in terms of crimes in America? 0 crimes, because they should not be here. It should be 0, right? So I wish we had no crime at all. I wish we lived in a completely safe society. That would be phenomenal. But we can eliminate illegal immigrants. That Obama clip that you played, you know, because bring it back to the way you started. You know what I liked Obama the most? When he coached his little girls' basketball teams. Do you remember that? Like, he was the coach on the sideline for his girls' basketball team. When you are going to lecture me about flooding the zone with propaganda, I would love for Obama to answer the question, what would you have done if when you were coaching your little girls' basketball teams, working as hard as you could to have them be successful, one of the teams that you were playing against had a boy who was 15 or 16 years old and he was dominating? He would have said, as every dad would have said, get his ass off the court. This is wrong. When you won't address things like that, you allow the zone to be flooded on, hey, there's no difference between men and women. I don't know why this is an issue. When you are not willing to address a blatant falsehood like that, it's hard for me to follow you anywhere because I know you have already lied to me.
Arynne, do you think at some level, all of these actors that do what Mark Ruffalo just did there, in some sense, that's why they have the job, actually? Like, before the election, all of the cast of the Avengers did the exact same thing he just did there, and why you have to vote for Kamala Harris. They're all replaceable. That's the thing. It's not to say Robert Downey Jr. is not a good actor. He obviously is. But every actor is replaceable because they're just pretending to do things. They're not actually doing them.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought, I don't love thinking about intention too much with this, though, because also Mark Ruffalo specifically is such a vile person and he seems so hateful in his heart that I think he might just do it for himself and for fun.
Just for the sake of hate. Okay.
I really think he does it for the sake of the hate in his heart. But what I think is so interesting about this clip also is the fact that he's saying immigrant. And I noticed this. I've seen it all over social media. There's one influencer in particular where it came across my feed. Her name's Kat Sickler, I think is her last name. She got really big during COVID. She has millions of followers across media and across all the different platforms. And she has a video where, of course, at one point she talks in Spanish because that makes it really charming and cute and drives the point home. And she talks about immigrants and all. So I don't know what Soros-funded signal got sent out to every single liberal and every social media influencer. This is for sure a paid campaign, or at the very least, it's if you want to stay in this business, you have to do this messaging, which is in its own way a paid campaign without the money. But they're all talking about immigrants. And this is where the left is so effective. They are so good at distorting and bastardizing language. And usually it's the slow boil of the frog. There was a switch that happened sometime last week with this language. It's the same way they talk about dreamers. It's the same way they call it gender affirming care. It's the same way they call it gun control. It's the same way they call it pro-choice. all of this language, or, liberal, I would just say retarded, right? Like the way they use language is so dangerous, and you can't have a normal conversation with someone on the left anymore because you're not even using the same vocabulary.
No, you're right. They dropped undocumented and now they're just saying immigrant. And every time I cover it on the show, I always say they refuse to make the distinction between illegal and legal. But you're right. There's intention behind that. It's not just magical. All right. Finally, we will get to the war to close the show before we say goodbye to you for the weekend. But first, Built for America. Hey guys, quick but important update. You might have heard about some energy tax credits that are in the spotlight right now. Well, here's the deal. Built for America is a new group that's bringing awareness to how these credits are helping rebuild U.S. manufacturing, strengthen our energy independence, reshore our domestic supply chain, and create real jobs right here at home. We're not talking theory, we're talking jobs, factories, and results. Not because of handouts, but because of incentives to build here, hire here, and grow here. Repealing them could have some real risks, fewer jobs, more dependence on China, and greater competition for advanced technology. I encourage everyone to take a look at what they have to say. Visit builtforamerica.us. All right, guys, so the big part of the war is not the bombs being dropped and all of that stuff. It's what's happening with the American media landscape. And of course, that gets us to this interview that Tucker Carlson had with Ted Cruz. And here is the part that went mega viral.
How many people live in Iran, by the way? I don't know the population. At all? No, I don't know the population. You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple? How many people live in Iran? 92 million. Okay. Yeah. How could you not know that? I don't sit around memorizing population tables. Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government. Why is it relevant whether it's, it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant? Because if you don't know anything about the country... I didn't say I don't know anything about the country. What's the ethnic mix of Iran? They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute. It's not even. You don't know anything about Iran. So actually, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran. You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government. You're the one who claims anything about the country. No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the I'm one not saying that. Who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad. You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump. Yes, I do. Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that... We're carrying out military strikes today. You said Israel was. Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them. Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity. No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them. You just said we were. We are supporting Israel. High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening. Okay.
All right, Arynne, let me start with you here because you wrote a piece about Tucker this week and you've been discussing this for quite some time. And it seemed like the floodgates kind of broke on Tucker this week. Like a lot of people have been waiting to criticize him, but nobody wanted to be in first. It's fairly, putting aside everything else, I would say this. He never interviews anyone like that. Maybe Ted should have been more prepared and known the amount of people, the 91 million. I don't think Tucker knew until a minute before either. I think it was obviously a setup in that sense. I treat all of my guests the exact same way, but he can do his show however he wants. But that aside, he was way more combative right there than if you were to take all of his other interviews since he's gone independent combined. What do you think is going on here?
Yeah. You mean besides Qatari money? Another a few things. First, I hate and regret how much I've had to see that clip this week. It is so painful. I think
by the way, there's a lot of good moments where Ted Cruz really does know his stuff and gets Tucker on his heels and all that. Okay, yeah. So maybe
but of course, it's just because, but everyone has TikTok brain and Tucker knows that. And Tucker doesn't actually have any integrity because if he did, he wouldn't pull a gotcha clip and use that as the preview for the interview. It's not, hey, here is someone who obviously knows that I'm coming here with pretty much at opposite viewpoint from them, that we are going to be at odds in this interview. Good for him for sitting with me. None of that here. We saw Constantine Kitson today or yesterday debated Dave Smith, I think, on Piers Morgan. And he tweeted saying, I give Dave credit for doing this interview with me because our side actually, and our side within the movement. Like we have a side left and right, and then within the right now we're splintering into these two factions. But we have class and grace and respect for people, and there's no respect coming from Tucker. I also just want to say I think we should have been given like barf bags for this for this segment. Next time I do this, I'm asking Rubin Report staff to send me something for when I have to watch. Can I
get the garbage can? We don't have Rubin Report barf bags, but I don't know if you've seen this on the show before. I do have.
Is this from the
and
tequila tasting?
It's not totally appropriate, but when I talk about Ilhan Omar, we do keep an Ilhan Omar garbage can here in case I have to puke. So I'll just keep that here just in case.
Yeah. No. But I do just want to say another thing, which is I really want to see behavior panel experts, or these guys that do a really good job analyzing when people are lying and what their intention is behind what they're saying. They're former CIA experts. And not to like plug someone else's YouTube channel on your own show. And I also have a YouTube, and so does Clay. But they do a really good job. And what I think is so interesting, and this is just from watching clips like that for the last few years, when Tucker very specifically asks about the population, he says 92 million. You could tell he looked that up on Wikipedia just before, because no one says 92 million. You would say around 90 million, like an honest person who has it in their, just in their memory. They wouldn't quote it exactly as 92. So congrats, Tucker, on looking up a few facts to get a gotcha moment with Ted Cruz. It shows us exactly the kind of, interviewer we've always known you to be, honestly.
Right. So look, I'm largely with you on that. Clay, we all interview for a living and we all chat with people and everything else. And anyone can judge any of us on the skills that we bring and how we treat people and everything else. The other moment, we don't even have to show it to you because people have seen it so many times. The other moment that I thought was interesting of that is Tucker at the beginning said, I'm against killing anybody. I'm against killing anybody. I'm against killing anybody, repeating it over and over as he has said for the last year. And then moments later, when Ted Cruz said that the Iranians have been trying to assassinate Donald Trump, he said, these are his words. It's not verbatim, but he basically said, if that's true, we should nuke Tehran. Well, I did Google it, and there are about 9.7 million people in Tehran. Help me put this together. What do you think is going on here?
I think there's legitimate debate. So to me, there are two real questions at play here. One is, should the United States in any way provide direct material aid, whether it's the big bomb buster or anything else that requires us to take action, right? Physical action, as opposed to what I would say is defensive action when we're shooting down bombs that Iran's trying to drop into Israel, when we are providing strategic intelligence assets, everything else. It's the next step to drop a bomb on Fordo. So that's one, right? Real debate. Should we do that? If we do that, where does that lead? Good and bad. Is it consequential and successful? Is it potentially going to lead to something worse? That's a real debate that we should have, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, right? Second part, should we in any way support or engage in the removal of the Ayatollahs as a leadership entity of Iran? Anything that has anything to do with that debate, I think, should be robust, uninhibited, and there are reasonable people of every different political perspective that could have a take on that. I don't think knowing what the population of Iran is, or knowing what the official ethnic makeup of Iran is, it reminds me old school, and Arynne might not have even hardly been born, but do you remember when George W. Bush ran for president the first time, and they quizzed him on who the leaders were of a variety of different parties? I mean, it's been like 25 years ago. And basically all of the media said, hey, this gotcha style, Jeopardy style questioning of leadership is not really that useful. Like what's the capital of South Dakota? I don't think impacts whether or not we should be able to have, energy policy that makes sense for South Dakota. And so I think it just felt profoundly unfair, and we haven't seen a lot of this since. To me in general, anything about whether we should take out the ability of Iran to have nuclear weapons, or whether we should take out the Ayatollahs, that's legitimate, that's real. I want to hear people's opinion on that. But I think leading with this was not an accurate reflection. I actually watched the conversation. I thought it was pretty good. They disagreed on a lot. That's healthy. We got to stop this idea that if you're a Republican, you have to agree on everything, or if you're a Democrat, you have to agree on everything. Reasonable people should have a variety of opinions on a variety of topics.
Right. And I agree. I didn't watch all of it, but I watched probably 75% of it. And there was a lot of good back and forth where you might argue, oh, this one got this point or this one got the other point. But to Arynne's point, they purposely use the preview of the gotcha. And to me, that shows intention, sort of like the confusion around, I wouldn't kill anyone, and a minute later I would. It's like, pick something here that roughly makes sense. Anyway, my hope is, for all my frustrations with Tucker lately, my hope is that this does get settled. And here's Trump saying that Tucker actually did apologize to him.
Have you seen the Tucker Carlson Senator Ted Cruz interview? It seems like this issue on whether or not the United States should strike is kind of dividing a lot of your supporters.
No, my supporters are for me. My supporters are America first. They make America great again. My supporters don't want to see Iran have a nuclear weapon. Tucker's a nice guy. He called and apologized the other day because he thought he said things that were a little bit too strong, and I appreciated that. And Ted Cruz is a nice guy. I mean, he's been with me for a long time. I'd say once the race was over, he's been with me ever since, right? But very simple. If they think that it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, then they should oppose me, but nobody thinks it's okay. People that don't want, I don't want to fight either. I'm not looking to fight. But if it's a choice between fighting and them having a nuclear weapon, you have to do what you have to do.
Arynne, I don't know if it's the yellow tie, so that's like multiverse Trump or what, but to me, that's as good as anything he has ever said. It is as honest and real as I've ever heard him say anything. He basically takes two guys who Tucker once texted that he hates him, then Tucker supports him, then Tucker goes after him here, and he says, I accept the apology. Ted Cruz was the last guy against him, election before this one, the original Trump 45 run. And they said horrible things about each other. And he points out he's been a supporter the entire way through. He wants to hold that. He wants to hold MAGA. And he also basically says, I don't want to fight, but I want to win. It's like, how much better could it possibly be than that?
No, I am loving this version of Trump, both on the fact that he just, he doesn't sweat the small stuff anymore, right? And this isn't even not even that small. This is actually quite large. Tucker has a huge following. I'd argue he is one of the most influential voices in the movement and in politics right now. And it's, a lot of people know he's very close with different people within the administration. So there are serious concerns when someone like Tucker voices strong opposition to Trump. And Trump doesn't care because he knows what his audience wants, what his supporters want, and what he wants. More importantly, Donald Trump knows what he promised the American people. He knows what he has believed for decades, and he is sticking with it. And all the other interviews be damned. He doesn't care. And I think the clip you just played, it's very representative of all the other clips we've seen of him over the last week, especially when everything started between Israel and Iran. This is how he's been speaking, very calmly, very comfortably, and certain of himself and what he needs to do. So it's very reassuring in a very unstable time that this is how Trump is approaching everything.
Yeah, I totally agree. Clay, bring us home.
I think Trump's superpower is he doesn't hold grudges. I mean, his vice president compared him to Hitler. Ted Cruz said he was uniquely dangerous as an American political figure. As you pointed out, Tucker, in text messages, I think that got revealed during some of the Fox News lawsuits, said awful things about Trump. I think Trump understands, probably because he sometimes does it himself, that in the emotion of an argument, sometimes you say things that you don't 100% believe. And Trump's superpower as a political figure is actually very unique. He's not a grudge guy. And I think that argument, and look, the way I would bring it home is, I've been married for 20 years. My wife disagrees with a large number of things that I do or say on a daily basis. That doesn't mean that we're not still on the same team when it comes to trying to raise kids, right? Like, I think this idea that everybody has to get in line and lockstep and support everything and every single measure that either political party does or any political leader does is wrong. If you have a functional brain, you should sometimes disagree. That's good. That's healthy. That's how we get to the best results.
Well said, my friend. Arynne, what you got this week in the free state of Florida this weekend?
What do I have this weekend? It's my first weekend home in months. So I'm relaxing, seeing friends. I'm just happy to take it easy.
You're prepping for the big Dave Rubin birthday party next week, which Clay Travis will not be going to because he's got some other house in another part of Florida and he wants to be with his family.
It's going to be a great house.
Have a great
Happy
weekend,
birthday,
everybody.
early.
See ya. Thanks, guys. Ciao.